So talk about the first Ghostbusters when you were filming that. And obviously you're working with Bill and Dan and Harold Ramis. Was it your job to be more the straight man with those three guys, do you feel? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think those guys are. I mean, first off, I think they're brilliant, all of them in their own different way. Bill Murray comes up with stuff that I don't know where it comes from. It's pretty hilarious, and Danny sort of is just this nonstop creative engine. And Harold was sort of the magnet that pulled everything together. And Ivan Reitman, who produced and directed, just had this wonderful way of identifying what's funny. We do scenes, but when it was there, he kind of knew it. Not all directors sort of have that ability. So my kind of coming in, I felt like a cousin visiting from out of town. But I've always felt that in getting into acting, that I'm bringing something that nobody else can bring. And so I know what I do, and like I said, I can be funny if I need to be funny. I can be whatever I need to do. So I never felt like out of place. It was more convincing the studio because they want the focus to be where they want it to be. So, but it was fun, and the guys, from day one, just really sort of embraced me. I feel very close to each and every one of them, and but it was a challenge, not because of the work as much as I think the studio sometimes understanding that it's okay that we can all be funny. You know what I mean? Sometimes the backers of the movie, I don't say the studios, and this is things have changed a bit, but they want the attention to be where they want it to be. So you're not meant to be the guy who's funny. This is the guy who's going to get the
right.
You know what I mean? If you're in, like I was saying, if I'm in better shape than this guy, he's supposed to be the guy who can sort of defeat the world, then somehow you got to sort of get me out of the way. And so it's always a balancing act, but it's also an ensemble. And like I said, my job is to not try to think about stealing a scene as much as making this believable, because that's the integrity of what we do. So I get where you want the focus. Now, being in Ghostbusters, you got a lot of funny guys, and everybody wants the line that is going to resonate. And I look back on it now, 40 years later, and I had some great lines. I think if I'm on the street and people ask me about the big Twinkie, or someone asks if you're a god, so it was great, and they were very good. The guys were very good about sharing and making sure that I was included, and I'm forever really grateful for that.
Was there a lot of improv on that set? Bill Murray in '84 was kind of at his peak.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, like I said, Billy was. I mean, he was. The heart. He kind of carried it, the focus. But yeah, we would do the script that was as written. It was a written script, so we weren't just out there making stuff up. But then after we got that in the can, Ivan would go like, okay, let's. And Billy would just come up with stuff out of. That was amazing. Harold Ramis told me when they were doing Groundhog Day that Harold directed. When it came to Bill's scenes, they didn't even write anything because they knew that he would bring something to it that they couldn't imagine. So it was improv, but it was also, kind of open to that sort of free flow, and some of the things were great. But then we also had a great script too. So it never felt like we were. I've done movies where you kind of go. We're making it up as we go along, and that wasn't the case with Ghostbusters.
Let's talk about Harold Ramis for a little bit. I was a huge fan of his from SCTV. I grew up in Canada, obviously the comedy troupe with John Candy and Rick Moranis, et cetera, et cetera. Well, Rick was in Ghostbusters as well, but Harold Ramis kind of a underrated genius in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I think his stamp is is all over. His print is all over Ghostbusters and a lot of the movies he's made. And Harold was. But he was just sort of the adult in the room. You know what I mean? He was kind of, he was funny, but he was always very approachable and welcome. And I credit him with a large part to how I've been able to sustain over these almost 60 years in the business, just how he conducted himself on the set, how people would kind of have their issues with each other. Like I said, it was like family, but everybody would listen to Harold. He was the one that people would kind of go, okay. And it would sort of, he kept it together because everybody respected him that much. And when there were things going on that I just didn't understand why it's what the hell. And Harold would be the guy who would say, Ernie, it's okay. And he would kind of explain things, and it's like, okay. So Harold was always the go-to guy. And like I said, not so much someone telling you as much as I observe, and I just love the way he always conducted himself with everybody. With everybody. And, certain people would have they come to the set and they're in a different mood today. And so you got to adjust for that. But Harold was consistent. And I always appreciated him and considered him, well, I consider all the guys friends, but just very, very different people.
It's interesting that you say that, that you learned kind of from watching Harold about how to conduct yourself on the set. And you've been in the business, you mentioned, better part of 50 years. Has there been other people that you've watched on the set that you've learned from and how to conduct yourself or how not to conduct yourself?
Yeah. No, over the years. I mean, I love Bill Murray. I would watch how he would deal with the fans. We'd be shooting in New York, and, car would just hit its brakes, and the guy would jump out of the car with it still running, run over and Bill and hug Bill. And Bill was always so gracious about it. I thought that was really kind of cool because I've worked with a lot of people who just would be freaked out or just not tolerant. But Bill was always kind of, I just love the way he handled himself, on the set.